And last week, Brian started a series of teachings called Family Goals. And when he introduced the series last week, he said this. And so pay attention to this because we're going to build on this today. He said, if we are not very intentional with our families, if we're not very intentional with our families, time will overtake us. And he is so right, isn't he? We need to be intentional with our families and not allow time to overtake us so that we miss achieving the goals that we have as families. We want to achieve them. Let's be intentional about it. And as we show up talking about families, all of our families look different, don't they? We're not all showing up in the same space at the same time with the same family looking the same way. Some of you here are divorced and remarried and blending two families together. Some of you have never been married in this room and you're in a relationship that may turn into that one day. Some of you in this room have no intention of ever being married and your family doesn't even look like your blood relative family. What you would define as family is more of a close friend group. But here's the thing. One of the goals that I believe we all have is to be moving forward in relationship in our family, no matter what it looks like, moving toward a healthy and happy family. That is one goal that we all have. And what we're going to talk about today is one choice that I believe every person in every family has that is the secret to making sure that your family looks and acts and behaves as a happy family. What is that choice? We're going to get into that together today as we look at our passage for today. It's found in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Paul wrote this to the church at Corinth, and one of the things that he's trying to deal with as he writes to these churches as the gospel spreads across Europe, as it moves north of the promised land, and this message of Jesus and his teaching spread, he's trying to help not just the Jews, but also another group that enters the church called the Gentiles. That's everyone else. And as these non-Jews are entering into relationship in the church, they're coming with a whole different set of beliefs. They believed in many gods, and now they're moving to a place where they believe in one. And these gods that they've believed in for so long, that they've been looking to for guidance and wisdom for so long, these gods that they believe in are manipulating them. They actually believe this, that their gods would at times have ill will toward their creation. They believed that these gods would even toy with them, purposely punish them if they didn't sacrifice for the will of the God that they believed in. And then Jesus shows up on the scene and he's saying, look, it's opposite. The one true God actually is willing to sacrifice for you. The one true God cares more about how you treat each other than you think. And that's what Paul is expanding on as he gets into this teaching in Corinthians, to this church in a city called Corinth. So 1 Corinthians is written to this church, and we're going to get into it today. We're going to be looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 13, right at verse 1. And here's the thing, as we get into this. Paul is expanding on this teaching that Jesus started about the love of God, how God's love is different. And you may have heard this passage recently if you've been to a wedding. This is probably the most popular passage to speak from at a wedding. 1 Corinthians 13, starting with verse 1. Let's jump into it. Paul says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but I do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Now, a number of weeks ago, we just wrapped up a series of teachings. Brian spoke during most of it. Wrapped up a series of teachings on the Holy Spirit and spiritual gifts. This is one of the spiritual gifts that Paul is talking about here, speaking in tongues. And the miracle that this comes from is in the Gospels. Shortly after the Gospels wrap up, Jesus ascends to heaven, and the church gets started in Acts chapter 2. And these disciples, these followers of Jesus, are gathered in a room, and the people outside hear them praying in that upper room. Some of the people listening, overhearing these people praying, thought that they were drunk. But then they had a change of mind and heart because they heard these prayers in their own language. Can you imagine having the gift or the ability to have your thought supersede language? Language was no longer a barrier. That would be an amazing miracle, wouldn't it? Well, these people that Paul's writing to not only are seeking that and making this a priority in their spiritual goals, but they also want to speak in the language of angels. They're like, let's go beyond just speaking. Let's pursue the language of angels as well. And Paul hears this. He's like, look, I understand that you think that this is special because that would be a pretty unique ability. But if you can pursue this and you don't have love, all you're doing is adding to the noise in the world. Is that really what you want your contribution to be? Just adding to the noise? Pursue love, he says. Have love. And it goes beyond this. He continues, verse 2. Let's throw that up here. He says, if I have the gift of prophecy, so I can start speaking truth into your present and your future, and I can fathom all the mysteries and all knowledge, and I have faith that can move mountains. But if I do not have love, there's that phrase again, have love, it's nothing. Paul's basically saying, look, I might have special insights. I might have tremendous knowledge. Maybe I even memorized all of Scripture. But you know what he's saying here? Maturity, depth. Doesn't matter. Knowledge makes no difference. He's saying, don't use knowledge as a measure of spiritual depth. And this is so important to, think about this. The people that you listen to, the ones that we see as experts, Paul's principle he's saying here, don't measure someone's depth. Don't measure their maturity by knowledge. There's a different measure Paul's suggesting that we use. He's saying they need to have love. Love is the measure. Let's read more, verse 3. He says, what if I go beyond this and I give all of I have to the poor? I give all I possess to the poor. Everything. All. I'm taking every penny from every account I have, giving it to the poor. I'm taking all of the investments that I have, land, stock, everything, selling it off and giving every dime to the poor. Every vehicle I own, going to the poor. Every investment I've made to the poor. And he says, then I give over my body to hardship, meaning that's not enough. You know what? In fact, I'm going back to work. After I've sold everything off and I've given it to the poor, then I'm going back to work. I'm getting another job. And in that job, everything I earn, I'm turning over to the poor. How about that? How about that? And Paul's like, does it have love? Because if even that doesn't have love, it's nothing. It means nothing. And this can get a little frustrating, when you're reading this, you're looking at it like, all right, well then what's love, bro? Because that sounds and looks like love to me. See, when we're teaching and you come and we talk about the Bible here, what we're trying to get back to is what is the author's intent? What is Paul's intent when he writes this? And we go back to the original language that this was written in, right? In order to define what the author's intent was. Not my intent in reading it, not what I want to pull out of it. What did Paul intend to say and do? And that's how we can get at this, to see what Paul is up to. Because we want to know what Paul's original intent is, we go back to the original. Let's put a picture of Paul's original document here. All right, so this is Paul's letter. And you can see here it's written in Greek, but what does this look like? It looks like just a collection of letters and words. In fact, when you're reading this in the original language and you say these words, it's like saying an entire run-on sentence for the whole page, because there is no punctuation. So how does Paul emphasize what he wants to emphasize without being able to underline and bold text and add exclamation points and commas and periods? One of the principles and one of the tools that these ancient writers would use is repetition. And so that's why he has this phrase, yeah, you may do this, but if you don't have love, you may do this, but if you don't have love. And finally, he's like, you want to give to the poor, but if you don't have love, it's nothing. He's stressing this idea of have love. And don't we all think we have love? Dude, I watched all the Marvel movies, all of them, all the Avengers films, and when Iron Man died, I felt it. I shed a tear. I have love. He's like, yeah, but I don't think you understand what God's definition of love is. That's what Paul's about to express to us next. So he goes into this list of these ideas that love is an action that we take. It's something that we embrace as we do it. Let's look at his list, verse 4. Love is patient. Love is patient. Dads, love is patient. Moms, love is patient. Brothers, sisters, cousins, love is patient. Kids, with your parents, love is patient. That means it's willing to wait. Love is willing to wait, even when you don't want to wait. Single gals in the room, hear me. If the guy that you are entering into relationship with is not willing to wait for you, it's not love. That's not love. Love is also kind. That means love is allowing you to go first. Love is kind. Love is surrendering my preferences for yours, because love is kind. Love does not envy, he says. Love is not jealous of you being in the spotlight. That's what envy is about. In fact, love is going to say, let me shine the spotlight on you, because love does not envy and love doesn't boast. We all know that people in our family, maybe it's your extended family, right? That person in your family who always has the better story. You say, well, let me tell you a story. Oh, let me tell you a story. Love doesn't do that. And love is not proud either. Paul continues, he goes on and he says, love does not dishonor. Let's throw the next one. It does not dishonor others. See, love is willing to turn this into a question. Love is willing to say, you know what? Is what I'm about to say or what I'm about to do going to bring dishonor to my family? Is what I'm about to say or what I'm about to do going to bring dishonor to my mom? Is it going to bring dishonor to my sister? Is it going to bring dishonor to my uncle? Is it going to bring dishonor to my friend? That's the question that love is willing to ask. And it's also not self-seeking. It's not self-seeking because it's not about me. Love is not about me. And it's not easily angered. Oh, this one, not easily angered. We're talking about real stuff here, aren't we? Yeah. It's not easily angered. Love doesn't lose its cool on people, doesn't blow up on people. Why? Because what does that create? If I'm easily angered and I'm losing it on people all the time, what does that create? That creates a sense of fear or trepidation as people enter into my presence, right? If I'm regularly losing it on people, it changes the environment I create as people enter into my circle of influence. And if fear is being created in the space that I enter into, what is my instinct? It's to pull back. It's to remove myself from the fear that's being created in that space, right? Versus if I see love in front of me and I enter into a space and I see and experience love in front of me, what's my instinct? It's to embrace it, right? What do you want to create as people move towards relationship with you in your family? Love also keeps no record of wrongs. Man, what would your family look like if you left here today and at lunch, you said, you know what, family? Today is the first day where we establish a new principle that we're going to be dedicated to. We're not keeping any record of wrongs. We're never going to bring up what happened yesterday. Friends, that's what God does for us. That's what God does for you. He's not going to keep record. When Jesus died for you, he died for all of you, all of the wrongdoing in your past, in your present, and the wrongdoing that you haven't even thought about yet. And he's not holding that against you. That's what love is. He goes on to say that love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. And that's another tough piece that we're going to get to in just a moment. But then Paul shares another quick bullet list. And this list is where the one thing is, and this one decision that we all make if we want to be moving our family, whatever it looks like, toward a place of health and happiness together. If that's the goal, this one choice is found in this next list, and it's so difficult. Let me show you what this list is. It's always protects, love always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Remember Sesame Street? One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. For me, I don't know about you. We'll find out what you think as we get into this, see if you agree with me. But one of these things, I don't like it. Because it's not like the others. Let me show you the one. Let's see if you can pick out the one of these four. Are you ready? I'm going to show you the one that I have a problem with. Always trusts. Come on, Paul. Really? Always? Always trusts. That just seems naive to me. Doesn't that seem a little foolish to you? Always trust. Always. Dude, do you know my family, bro? Always trust. Let's go through the rest of the list, because the rest of the list I'm going to show you. I can get there. It's tough, but I can get there. Let's look at the rest of the list. Always protects. I'm down with this. I'm a father, all right? Some of you in the room are parents. If your kid messes up, I'm going to protect my kid whether they screw it up or not. They're my kid. I was a soldier. Whether or not I disagree, I'm going to protect. I can get on board with that. I can get on board with defending your right to whatever your opinion is. Even if I disagree, you have the right to have it. I can get on board with protection. Right? Always hopes. All right, that's a little tougher, because that means hoping for the best for everyone. There's a lot of people in the world that I don't like. And I have no interest in ever liking them. But hoping is the right thing to do for everyone, so I can get on board with hoping the best for them, even though I can't stand them. I can get there. It's gonna be an effort, but I can get there. Always hope. Always perseveres, no problem. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. We're gonna bind together, we're gonna get through it, we're gonna do it together. We persevere. I can do that. But trust, always? Man, that's tough. So what do we do when it's difficult? All right, well, we go back to the Greek again when we're trying to understand Paul's intent. Is Paul's intent really tied to trust like it seems to come out in English? Well, let's go back and learn. So the Greek word for this word, trust, is this word right here, pisteuo. And it means literally, it's actually more difficult in the original language because it also means to believe. So I am to believe them, to be persuaded by them, and to trust them. It's even more difficult than I thought. So what? Really? Always trust? And here's why I believe the secret to a happy family. Happy relationships require us to have trust as our default mode, to choose trust first, because this is what we end up in, and this is what I want you to see as we get into this. This might help you understand this illustration right here. So in relationship in all of our families, we're all presented with what I'm about to show you regularly. This happens in every relationship, father, son, husband, wife, cousin, whatever it is. Every relationship experiences what I'm about to show you. There is what I want. I have a want, I have a goal, I have a desire for the relationship. There is something that I've told you that is an expectation for me. And then the other person that I've spoken to, the other side of the conversation, there is what I see. I've communicated what I want, and then I see the result. I see what I see. What happens when there is a gap between what I want and what I see? Now here is the secret. What are you going to put in the gap? When there is a gap, when something is missing with what you see does not measure up to what you want. What does this look like? She said that she was going to be here, and she's not. He said he was going to show up, and he didn't. How do you fill the gap? Well, Paul is saying default mode is what? Love always trusts. And there's really only a couple of options that you can fill the gap with, but every time there's a gap, here's the thing I don't want you to miss. If you leave with anything today, leave with this, because there will be a gap. And you have the choice to what you fill the gap with. It may not feel like it. In fact, most times, especially right after hearing this truth, you're going to go into experiencing life again in your family, whatever it looks like. You have the choice to what you do with this gap. It may not feel like it because it's going to feel like a reaction. It's going to feel like instinct, but it's not. You can choose to do what Paul's advising and believe the best. Believe. What is the default mode? To believe. To even be persuaded to the point of trust. That's believing the best. What does believing the best look like? What does this look like? Let's go back. All right. She said she was going to be here. She's not. He said he was going to show up. He's not here. But I'm sure that they have a good explanation because he's been under a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. They have been coping with such difficulty. I'm sure there's a good explanation. But what's the alternative? What if I don't fill the gap with believing the best? Well, then you assume the worst. That's the other option. What does this look like? She said she was going to be here. I should have expected this. In fact, I did expect it. She's not here. And you know what? Her mother was no better. I should have known that she wasn't going to show, because this has been a pattern of behavior. We all predicted it, didn't we? We all knew. That's what assuming the worst is. What does that create in your family? What does that create in your family if all you do is assume the worst? Default mode of love. Love's standard method of operation is believing the best. And don't mistake this. You have the choice of what you are going to do with that gap. And here's the thing. Paul's principle stands the test of time. This principle of believing the best, which fosters an environment of trust. Because what do you want people to experience when they enter into a relationship with you? Assuming the worst is waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time, isn't it? Assuming the worst is just approaching life in every relationship by saying, yeah, I don't think they're going to follow through. You don't think that they can feel that when they walk up to you? To discuss any expectation that you might have. If you live in the mode of operation of always assuming the worst, when they say to you, yeah, I'll do that for you, your response is always, yeah, right. Does that foster the kind of relationship you want with them, especially if they're a part of your family? Here's the thing. This not only stood the test of time 2,000 years ago, because the oldest document we have of this letter is about 150 AD. It also measures up to modern research as well. There's this business guy, his name is Marcus Buckingham. He wrote this book called The One Thing You Need to Know. And his whole premise in this book is, because it's a leadership management business book, his whole premise is that in every area of business, there is one thing that you can become an expert on. And if you can identify the one thing that makes the biggest impact, it'll transform your business. And to prove his point, he used the idea of couples, married couples. He didn't just choose any married couples. He said married couples that are happy and they've been married 10 years or more. And the love that exists in their current relationship is greater than when they started. That's the only prerequisite. Let's see if we could find the common denominator, the one thing. And so they asked these couples a series of questions, and you know what they found? That as they began to rate each other, that one partner rated the other partner more highly than the other partner would rate themselves. You understand? Are you tracking with me? You following me? Let me make it more concrete. It'd be like my wife and I, Shelley, and I taking a survey. And Shelley rates me on the questions that she's answering about me. She rates me higher than I would rate myself. Every time. That is what happy couples do. That allows their relationship to continue to grow and end up in a state with more love than when they started. They always believe the best about the other. You see? I love this. I love when modern research proves a point that is 2,000 years old. It's been there all along. Because you know what I would have thought going into it? I would have thought that it would have been different. I would have thought that in order for the couple to remain happy, they would have to lower their expectations of each other. After you get married, or you start a relationship, they're like, oh yeah, well, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Or she's not what I thought she was. Oh, she didn't say things like that before, or he didn't do that before. And you lower your expectations of the other person so you can stay married. The exact opposite is what really happened. They believed the best. They believed the best. That's what made the difference. Friends, what does option B look like? What if I choose not to believe the best? So let's just play out the scenario, okay? We've looked at what believing the best does, how it results in these positive experiences in our families. Let's say I'm going to choose option B. I'm going to assume the worst. How does that play out? What does that look like now in my family? Let's take that ride. Let's visit that amusement park. Let's go to option B. Throw it up here. Option B, assuming the worst, let's foster an environment of doubt. I want to do that in my family. You enter into a relationship with me. We want to pursue health and happiness, but I don't think you really want to. I'm going to enter into this relationship with the assumption that you just never show up. Before it's even started. I'm going to thrive on making mistakes and looking for them and finding them. And let's just encourage negative speculation while we're at it. Let's take that ride. I want to go on that vacation. What does that do? At the end of the vacation, friends, we're all showing up sunburned and blisters and bruises. Is that really the best approach? But when I go back to Paul's list, and when I go back to the research that's been done, you know what the advice that they gave out of that book that Marcus Buckingham wrote was? Let me show you the advice for families and for couples that they concluded with at the end of their study. Go ahead and throw that advice. Find the most generous explanation and believe it before they even get started. And don't get me wrong, I know that there's obstacles in this. I know that there's challenges in this. And those challenges are extremely difficult. One of the challenges is what I see, is the experience. Let me go ahead and throw those obstacles up here. What we experience is one of the challenges. What I see, it's definitely a challenge. Because, they did it again. They did it again. Am I really supposed to trust when this is a pattern of behavior? I get it. Believe me, I struggle with one of those, that this issue is one of the biggest obstacles for me. It doesn't mean believing the best doesn't mean that we don't deal with consequences at the end of the conversation. It doesn't mean that we don't deal with the results. It means that we're not going to prejudge them before all the information is in. That's what this means. It means that as you're in relationship, you're maintaining a posture of openness and love before you get to the results, because it gives them an opportunity to step up. Think about the difference of the experience. If we're going through a difficult time and I'm about to follow up on a situation for you and I'm about to meet your expectation, hoping that I can, knowing that I have failed in the past. And if all of a sudden you change your posture and I go into that situation hoping to measure up, and your posture is believing the best in me, and then I'm able to fulfill it, I'm gonna finish that issue knowing that you believed in me It's going to make me want to strive for it more versus the opposite. Are you tracking with me? This is why believing the best is so important. The other obstacle is who we are, what we show up with. We all have stuff from our past, friends. We all have our mommy issues and our daddy issues. We all have issues from previous bosses, other situations that we drag into every relationship. And so we come into the situation with damaged goods. All the more reason for us to change what our families look like. Because this is not only the secret to a happy family, it's the secret to changing our world. If we can learn to believe the best in each other, we can make such a difference. Let's pray. God, I thank you so much for this wisdom that you've shared with us. God, knowing how important a true expression of love is to the world around us. God, knowing that this choice even includes perseverance, which was the last thing on your list. God, just acknowledging the fact that this is difficult. One of the most difficult things that we could do for our families is by changing this standard. God, help us to achieve that goal so that we can show our world what your love really looks like. Amen.